Welcome to another episode of Progress, Potential, and Possibilities, discussions with fascinating people designing a better tomorrow for all of us. I'm your host, Ira Pastor. Welcome, everybody, again to another episode of the show, bringing another really awesome guest for you today. And, today we are going to be looking at a major but still quite under-discussed intersection of health, workforce productivity, and corporate policy, specifically the topic of menopause in the workplace, and this life transition that affects a significantly large portion of the workforce. Has historically been treated sort of as a private health issue rather than a workplace systems issue. And there's been some really interesting recent data from Korn Ferry Institute in collaboration with Vira Health, suggesting that nearly half of women report that either perimenopause or menopause symptoms impact their work performance. And then more recent research, as cited by the Mayo Clinic, estimates that menopause-related productivity loss in the U.S. alone stands at around $2 billion annually. And I think that's even underestimating a lot of the indirect cost. And ultimately, the question becomes what happens when, this biologic transition starts to meaningfully impact workforce participation, retention, productivity, and to explore how companies are responding in practice, not just policy. We have the honor of being joined today by Karen Bishop, who is Senior Director of HR Rewards at Astellas Pharma in the U.S. And across more than 2 decades in HR leadership roles at organizations, not just including Astellas, but MilliporeSigma, Shire, Takeda, Cabot, and Putnam Investments. She's really built deep expertise in total reward strategy, healthcare benefits design, retirement systems, organizational change, and now in Astellas, she's really helping to evolve this internal menopause workplace pledge into a broader global initiative focused on everything from manager education, employee support systems, benefits navigation, ultimately positioning menopause as part of this larger conversation around workplace health, retention, and productivity. Very important set of topics, a lot to get into, an honor to have her. Karen Bishop, welcome to our show.
Thank you so much for having me. This is such an important topic, as you've highlighted, and we're continuing to evolve it in the employee benefit space. So I'm really happy to have the opportunity today to talk a little more about it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I look forward to getting into all of it. Before we touch on it, though, I would just, your career is quite fascinating, having spanned everything from benefit systems, retirement design, healthcare economics. Talk a little about yourself. Introduce yourself a little further, because you really had an interesting run so far at a quite interesting intersection of HR and organizational dynamics, and just like to hear a little bit more about you if we could.
Oh, sure. Thank you. I've grown my career in employee benefits really from the start. It started with retirement plans and education, and then evolved into the other pieces of employee benefits, which is very broad. So it could be leave management. Obviously, employee health is a big part. Then there was the wellness and well-being trend from 2 decades ago. But we're also supporting employees in many important parts of their lives, whether it's family forming. We're here, our team is here when our employees are at their best, when they're feeling great. And we're also there when our employees are going through major life changes, maybe again, adding to their family or having challenges with adding to their family. And then also sometimes when they're at their worst or their family's at their worst, whether it's a disease or an accident. That's really my team's focus, is to make sure that we're supporting our employees in all of those phases as best we can. And that's the interesting thing about my role too, is that, for the large portion of Americans, their workplace is their provider of their health insurance. And so they really, the majority of employees, 60% or so, rely on what the company offers regarding their health. And so, of course, my team and myself, we take that position very seriously because it is the health of our employees, and what their ability to thrive in life. And so we'll talk certainly today about that, but menopause is certainly one of those very critical phases as well.
Absolutely. Before we, drill down on sort of what this, major sort of demographic shift means and what it means and what's happening in the workplace, let's just talk about some of these big picture numbers because, as we're sitting here in 2026, worldwide, over 1 billion women, either perimenopausal, menopausal, or postmenopausal, something like 25 million entering this category every year. The United States numbers around 70 million. It's amazing because, about 80% of women experience, all the vasomotor symptoms that come along with this for a very long period of time. And we'll talk about how that period of time overlaps with sort of the critical time in the workplace. Anyway, let's talk a little bit about this because, again, these are significant numbers. And you being an international company, obviously see this from many different perspectives. But take us into this world, if you would.
Sure. Yeah, it's quite amazing. And I think that for me, interestingly enough, my career has paralleled this phase of life I'm in this phase of life basically. So it's near and dear to my heart. And as I've evolved in employee benefits, I've kind of grown up in that world where benefits was changing along with my life phase. So as I was entering the time where it was the time to think about having a family, that's when maternity and paternity benefits really started evolving. It wasn't just you were going to get 8 weeks and come back. It was up to 15 weeks, 20 weeks, even longer. And so I've hit those phases. And then also family forming benefits, the same thing. And then we went through COVID and mental health became the number one priority. So now I think that's the interesting thing about the evolution of our workforce. More women are in the workforce. They're in top level management more than ever before. And now they're in that phase. They're in this stage of life. And we're talking about it finally, where that wasn't really the case before. I could say that this subject was completely taboo. Even parents wouldn't talk about it with their families. And so they wouldn't even say what their experience was. And so no one, in the workforce today might even have a baseline of what to expect because number one, no one talked about it. Number two, it was just something you went through. But at the time, that might have been a woman who wasn't working. And so how do you navigate that when you're in an office and you're dealing with symptoms? And so that's really what I think there's this perfect storm of women in the workforce and women saying, I need more, because
Yep.
that's what they're accustomed to, sort of with the evolution of benefits. Their needs have really evolved over time. And now we're at that place where menopause is really in the forefront. And then I think it's so critical for what I do in employee benefits is I might be helping women today in that phase or soon entering that stage of life. But whatever we do now is really critical to the women that are younger and they're watching what happens. Is this the type of workforce I want to be at in 10 years when that's me?
Mhm.
Are these benefits meeting my needs? And, that's really one of the most critical things about benefits is, it's people don't realize how important they are until they don't have them. And so it really is an important part of the employee-employer relationship.
Absolutely. And let's go a little further, and we'll bring in the what you've learned with the recent studies, but the broadly looking at menopause as a workforce systems issue, not just this health topic sitting over here. Because as you're pointing out, we have this transition occurring somewhere between ages 45 and 60, and that is as you saying, the perfect storm when women are, and when the pharma industry, they're scientists, they're clinicians, they're executives, and so forth. And the Mayo Clinic study, which talked about this $2 billion number, when you take into account, sort of the hidden component of that, and sort of all the indirect, I mean, it's 10 times that number. It's a staggering. Talk a little bit about what was found in both these studies, and introduce our audience. Our audience knows a lot about what absenteeism is, but this principle of presenteeism, the fact that we can't think that somebody could be at their desk or in the lab at the bench and not be there because there's a lot of other stuff going on in their life. Walk us down this path as well, because I think it's a fascinating topic.
Right. Yeah. And one we really do like to talk about a lot when we think about benefits and the policies and practices that we have for our employees. The Mayo Clinic study is the nail on the head is that, there's not enough support, right? People aren't getting the right treatment. There's so much more to it. And I think that lends itself to both absenteeism and presenteeism. People really think of menopause as it's hot flashes and that, oh, that employee is having a hot flash and, they might have a fan, during a meeting or they're fanning themselves. Like that's the cliche. But newsflash, it's not just hot flashes. There are a myriad of other symptoms. And although hot flashes are debilitating, absolutely, there is so much more to that. So I think we think of hot flashes. Hot flashes raise a woman's temperature by 4 degrees. So now you have 102 temperature basically at a point in time while you're at work. The normal response to someone saying they had 102-degree fever would be to lie down, take a moment, take a rest. Yet we don't ever translate that when someone says they're having a hot flash. So I think that's what you're saying about the presentee issue. I'm there, but I can't function because I'm not feeling well. And then in addition to that, there are so many other symptoms, right? Like it could be just mental fatigue, brain fog. I'm doing my best to concentrate, but my body is just not allowing me to get the words out or to think straight about this topic. And then many of the symptoms of menopause just don't make a woman feel good, right? And also they can interrupt sleep. So sleep is interrupted, and then you don't feel your best the next day. And so it really is just a continuous bad cycle, which lends itself to just not being your best at work. And that's a really hard spot for a woman at this age who, again, has probably grown her career, is trying to do her best at work, and she's not feeling the best. And then she's also dealing with the other things that we have talked about a little bit in employee benefit design. It's like, what care do you have for your children? What's available for your children to make sure that they have what they need? So we have things like, care and camps. Then we have the sandwich generation. So we're also thinking about our parents and how we're taking care of them. And so, we've added policies for family care. So all of those things exist. At the same time, you're feeling your worst. And then likely, if you have a happy marriage, your husband's probably really annoyed with you because you're tired, you're irritable, you're not feeling your best at work. And so it's just one of those stages that just is extremely difficult to navigate. And I think that women who I work with or my colleagues or my friends, they're really doing the best they can. And my job within my company is to make sure I have policies and support available and build the empathy around that so employees can do their best at the right point in time for them.
Mhm. Kind of one thing I know you've written about, and and sort of echoing this from your important position at Astellas in HR and benefits to sort of all other HR and benefit offices all around the world is, hey, perfect claims data for this thing, known as menopause, perimenopause, what we categorize as, doesn't exist. And you can't sit around waiting because it's not going to show up. And there's several examples of this about, It might not show up in the medical insurance data as menopause or the pharmacy claims or workers' comp data, or whatever the case may be. When it comes to the issue of the symptoms, as you're pointing out, sleep and brain fog and anxiety get characterized as sleep and brain fog and anxiety and not menopause. So we miss a lot of this. And then one other one that I found was really interesting is just the sort of the time lag issue that, some of this information, comes over years rather than weeks. It's not going to show up in the reports that come across my desk that frequently. Talk a little about this because there's a lot going on in the HR benefit side of things that we're unfamiliar with. And I'd really like you to spend a little time here to explain why it's the missing thing, and it
Yeah.
shouldn't be missing.
No, I'm happy to. And that is it's a challenge. So again, in charge of my health plan, our company spends almost $100 million on our health plan annually for our employees and their families. It's not an insignificant number.
Mhm.
Um, and one of the things that we try to do when we manage and design our programs is that we make data-driven decisions. What is the data telling us about our employees and how can we respond to that? Well, guess what? There really isn't any data on menopause. We actually went to our health plan and said, tell us how many claims you have that are for menopause. And there were 6. So that just tells you the lack of data because we know that 53% of our workforce in the US is female. We know that the majority of our male employees cover their spouse. So we have women on our plan, and we also know their average age. So we know that there are certainly menopause related claims. But to your point, they don't come through that way. They come through as other things, whether it's mental health, anxiety, could be ortho claims like musculoskeletal claims, or they're not being tagged as menopause at all. And so that's the real challenge. So what we've done is really just kind of taken a step back and said to ourselves, what do we see in the data? And we're asking the question every single time is, what does this mean? How does this relate and what does it mean to menopause? It might not be obvious up front, but if we're seeing a spike in mental health claims, then we're going to say, is that related to menopause? If we're seeing a spike in musculoskeletal claims, is that related to menopause? And what can we do? So we're constantly putting that lens on it, which for me is just a really different way of looking at things because I've never done that before. In my work across benefits over the years. But I think that because we've realized there's such an unmet need, we really need to think differently about those claims and the programs that we put in place regarding them, because we just find that people aren't getting, they might be getting the symptoms treated, but they're not getting that discussion of, is this part of a broader issue, which could be menopause, the drop in hormones, and what that means to a woman's long-term health. And so we're really trying to close that gap with our programs. So I'll give you one interesting piece of information. We do have a digital health platform that we implemented over the last 2 years. It's been very successful, wide usage, a digital health platform for musculoskeletal claims.
Mhm.
And, so just getting care online for those disorders, back pain, shoulder pain. We just added uh, pelvic floor
Mhm.
and thinking that that would never, that people would use it, but, we never thought to the extent. Well, the highest usage is for back, and the second highest right behind it by a small percentage is pelvic floor. So that just surprised us, right? Like we thought people were going to get their knee, their shoulder, back, of course, hip pain, all of those things, but really it's pelvic floor, shot right up there.
Mhm.
So there's an unmet need, is the best way that I can say it.
Absolutely. No, that's again, there's a lot going on here that we don't normally think about, and I appreciate you explaining, laying the landscape out here. And I think this is, a perfect segue into, going into what Astellas and your team has built. It's known as the Astellas Menopause Workplace Initiative, and this is not, again, just, hey, oh, we have this menopause benefit here and now. You really created this rather broad well-being and total rewards strategy that has a bunch of different pillars to it. And I thought we could just, take some time and walk through each of these, because they're each of them, extremely important. I thought that a great place to start was just like the leadership commitment here and sort of this menopause pledge, because I come out of another part of the pharmaceutical industry, right? And to get anything, hey, we're not going to be a small molecule company anymore. We're going to do gene therapy now. It takes a major pledge from a management to change policy at that level. Same thing in your world. I mean, this didn't just start at the lower level. This is an executive level cultural commitment to what you're doing per this menopause pledge. And I'd love to hear what just went into getting a leadership commitment for something like this in an organization that is so large like Estelle.
Yeah, and thank you. It definitely was from the top down. I think Astellas is in the business of bringing value to patients, taking care of unmet needs in the health world, in the medical world, whether that's with gene therapy or prescription drugs, and the research on menopause was just staggering, that there was an unmet need. And so our leadership said, we need to commit to making sure our employees, especially, are educated in this way. And that's really what how the menopause pledge evolved. So at first it was just getting our employee impact group involved and doing education amongst our women's EIG,
Mhm.
providing education on menopause, treatment options, what it meant, the symptoms, the stigma, getting the conversation started. From there, it evolved into manager education and really making sure that our managers understood this phase of life, and that they needed to have the empathy to help manage our employees through this phase. It was really a focus on leadership accountability. We had such a large percentage of our workforce attend that session that it was amazing. And honestly, I think the biggest supporters were male leaders. And I think that was really surprising for us, is how much they stepped up and said that they understood the issue. They're going to have their spouses at home. They thought it was really critical that we were bringing this education to our employees, and
Mhm.
making and really changing the culture at Astellas, to make sure that employees knew they were supported. So
Mhm.
the pledge really was to make sure that our employees understood that they had leadership accountability here, that they should be able to talk about and feel open to talk about their struggles with menopause, that they had the support that they might need, whether it's through different programs, digital health solutions, maybe it's an employee assistance program resource because they are having, a tough time with their mental health or anxiety, and then getting to the continued education. And then lastly, making sure our plans and policies really help support women in that phase as well, that they felt like there was time to take away, to be sick, because of a menopause related issue, or that they could flex their hours because maybe their hot flashes were worse in the afternoon and they're going to work more during the day. So luckily enough, we have that flexibility built into our programs, to really match the need of our employees.
Mhm. And Astellas has something like 18,000 employees all around the world. But you specifically, as the centerpiece of the initiative was these 700 or so line managers that got the initial training. And aside from them learning, what menopause is and perimenopause, postmenopause is all about, you really, and they weren't trained to be sort of become healthcare practitioners. They were trained to make people comfortable, not when it wasn't a clinical thing, how to respond, how to discuss the accommodations appropriately,
Right.
maintain confidentiality, of course. again, how were they trained? How long does it train to become, menopause certified inside Astellas? Talk a little bit about that process. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, sure. So I think that the training for managers or the enablement for managers was about an hour. And again, that was just to build the awareness, build the empathy, appropriate ways to respond, even just to recognize, sometimes it's like someone's not feeling right, and it's okay to ask someone, do you need something? What can I do for you right now that will make you feel better? And if you're open to talking, I'm here. So there was that portion. In addition to that, we have our menopause ambassadors. So those are across the country, and they go through a few hours of training to really help, what they can do on a local level to broaden awareness amongst their local teams. So that could be a group in Australia, that could be a group in Singapore. We had a group in Japan that did multiple meetings and sessions over a period of time. So it really varies by location. But that has been something that's been amazing, is building that momentum across the globe with our own internal people.
You know, And then this feeds back to sort of the point we talked about in terms of, the data, not waiting for perfect data, and obviously the importance of navigation of what exists. And as pointing out before, many organizations like yours have very useful benefits, but the employees don't know how to find them, and whether this component, falls in, gynecological care or hormone therapy coverage or mental health counseling or whatever the case may be. Talk about that side of it, because I think and it comes back to your department and your organization. Again, introduce us to how, you focused on making benefits easier for people to understand in this rather complex, situation.
Yeah, and I do appreciate that. And I think that, candidly is one of the things that we struggle with. And I'm very open to saying that with my colleagues and other benefit managers, that we would say that that's one of the biggest watchouts, is that you can build these programs, you can have them available, but if people don't know about them, then that's a problem, right? So we have done so many campaigns internally, and we've seen, some really good data that the usage is increasing. But it's not enough. Based on what we know about our employee population, we feel like there's just not enough people accessing the right care. So now that we're about 2 years into this evolution, that is one of our big pushes for this year's annual enrollment, is to do a whole splash for our employees on menopause and menopause care that's available. And also, that's going to lead into World Menopause Day in October. And we have multiple sessions planned amongst our employee population to again, re-highlight this very important stage of life, and the policies, programs, plans, solutions that are available to them and their family. It's an evolution. It's not like overnight everybody's gonna
Sure.
say, "Oh, I know what I need." I think care is really hard to find. Again, people still might think I'm not ready to talk about it, or I'm fine. But the more that we learn about the topic, the more that we just need to keep pushing our employees to think differently about it. So one example is, we know that heart health is the number one killer of women, cardiovascular disease, heart
Yep.
attack. And that has a huge tie-in to menopause. So one of the things that we're going to be pushing this year is to say, get your baselines done. You might
Yeah.
not think you have a heart issue. You probably don't, but do you have a baseline? How do you know when it's getting worse? And so that's really critical, because what we know is that uh, cardiovascular health, in addition to bone health, is one of the biggest critical health issues post menopause, right? So it's not just the
Right.
perimenopause, the menopause, the post lasts, sometimes 40% of a woman's life. So we want to make sure that they have the appropriate care. And that really starts now with the average age of our population. That's going to be our focus for this year.
Very cool. Any interesting anecdotes related to sort of the flexible work support when it comes to something like menopause. If hey, I only got 1.5 hours of sleep last night, that's gonna I'll have a presenting problem today. Is there a special cold room for hot flashes? Any interesting stories along those lines of stuff that is either in place or on the drawing board for this particular set of initiatives?
Uh, no, that's a great question. We already have a flexible workplace, and so our employees are really empowered to be able to flex their schedule. And most of our employees do enjoy having a hybrid work environment. So, we do have the typical support that most companies would have, like a wellness room and things like that, or a lactation room. And so those things are available, but it's just more about feeling empowered in order to take the time away that you need to get yourself feeling better so you can come back and do your job. And that can, luckily, we're an organization that is very focused on our long-term goals and objectives. It's not about being at your desk, butts in seats. And so our employees really should be empowered always to take care of their health.
And then just one other thing, Karen, I want to ask, because you are quite a global company. I think Astellas is something like in 70 countries all around the world. Any interesting, global stories related to this? Are there any countries that you might not think of that do a lot better or a lot worse than others? Like, hey, we need to learn from these examples. We need to do better here. What's happened on the global front?
Yeah, I would say that that is a very interesting challenge. Certainly we have a little more control in the United States since we are the
Yeah.
payer. And so we're dealing with multiple health systems across the globe, right? And every one of them is different. So one of the things that we have been doing, again, as part of our work with continuing to educate about the need for menopause support, is to challenge all of our partners across the globe. The first question we ask is, what do you have for menopause support available? I will say some countries are a lot better than others. I would name Canada and the UK, top notch. And then other countries, it's really a cultural challenge. Like in Brazil, it's kind of one of those things where you don't talk about it because women don't want to admit that they might be having trouble. And so it's not something that's spoken about. So we have to learn to overcome that challenge. And our local teams in Brazil are doing an amazing job with that. And so it's really situational across the globe, and also just you know, you can think of it as how women are revered in different cultures. That impacts this conversation. The available health resources. Some cultures may say that this isn't a health condition and therefore we're not going to cover the medications that might help with symptoms in this phase of life. And so it's a real challenge, and I think something that's going to continuously evolve as more and more women are entering this phase of life. When you're talking about billions of people, at some point it's really hard to ignore.
Right. Right. Yeah, no, it's again, it's a significantly unmet need. And I, again, I'm glad to see the way you're thinking about sort of, all aspects of a program like this. Because as I said, it's not just one thing. And so it's pretty impressive the way you brought all this together. What else is coming up, Karen? I mean, I know that you get out there to a lot of the HR and benefit conferences. I've seen you talk a lot about women's health. What should we be on the lookout for you as we get further into 2026? Other initiatives, talks where you're going to be talking about the Astellas Menopause Workplace Initiative, and then anything else public facing while we have you today, please.
Yeah, thanks. So I'm always out, attending either conferences, benefit related topics to talk about menopause and the importance of menopause in the workplace as an employee benefit. And it's constantly evolving. Again, so it's really an interesting time. Different players entering the market. Digital health evolving so rapidly, and what that can do to help with this unmet need. So constantly talking to industry peers, colleagues, other benefit leaders, consultants to talk about, what can we do to challenge our vendors, what's coming up in this space, what data can we get, how can we evolve that data. So that's my piece from an employee or perspective. I think Astellas is always out supporting menopause education initiatives, always out, out there trying to get our leadership in Washington to pay more attention to women's health, not even about menopause. I mean, that's certainly one of the most critical topics, but it could be sleep, it could be reproduction and infertility. So, any resources that go to women's health, it's going to impact menopause. So we're always very much in favor of making sure that our leadership in Washington is very much aware of these critical issues.
Outstanding. No, again, an amazing set of initiatives. I wish you the best with all of it as you continue to move them forward in your organization. One last thing while we have you, and I know this is not on the benefits topic, but I'm reading a little bit about you in preparing for this show. I saw that in addition to yoga, downhill skiing, playing tennis, and boating, you're a rock and roll aficionado as well. Any cool concerts you've been to recently? I'm just personally,
Yes,
love music as a
actually.
event too.
So, thank you for asking. I am actually, oddly enough, a female who is a fan of the band Rush, and
Nice.
they are back on tour. And so I've seen them twice in Dallas, Texas in the last 2 weeks. And in two
Awesome.
weeks, I'm heading to New York City to see them again. So I
Wow.
feel like I'm a little bit of a groupie traveling the US. Waiting to see my favorite band. But I did hit Noah Khan last week,
Cool.
which was excellent. And so, yeah, you will always find me at a concert.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yes.
No, again, wish you the best with all this, Karen. I think it's an amazing set of programs and initiatives you put together, and I look forward to seeing its continued evolution. Again, for everybody out there who's going to be listening to this episode across the various podcast networks or watching on the YouTube channel, you've been spending time with Karen Bishop, Senior Director, HR Awards, Astellas Pharma US. Karen, again, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to come talk to us for a little while today about everything you're up to. Thank you for everything you do for patients and women. And I'd like to say on our show, thanks for helping create a better tomorrow for people. It's a really cool program, and I look forward to continue to follow you and help you share the word.
Thank you so much. Again, it's amazing that we have people like you out here getting this conversation going. That's what we need. More education, more people talking about it, and this world will be a better place.
Really great having you.
Thanks again.